I moved back to my old hometown to find peace. I wanted a quiet life for my wife, Sarah, and our daughter. But this town is full of old shadows. Some things do not stay in the past. The house next to ours was empty for a long time. Then, a new neighbor moved in. At first, I did not care. People move all the time. But then I saw her. She looked exactly like Alyssa. Alyssa was my high school sweetheart. She had a huge crush on me, and we were happy. But she died in a car crash during our senior year. I saw her die. I went to her funeral. This new woman said her name was Lisa. She had different hair, but she had the same eyes. I could never forget those eyes. They were deep and dark. During the day, Lisa was nice. She waved at us. She smiled a lot. She seemed like a normal neighbor. But when the sun went down, she changed. I started waking up at 3 a.m. I felt like someone was watching me. I would look out my bedroom window. There she was. Lisa would be standing in her own window, staring directly at me. She did not move. She did not blink. She just watched. I told my wife, Sarah, about it. I told her I was scared. "You are just tired," Sarah said. She laughed at me. "Moving is stressful. You are seeing things, but I was not seeing things." Every night, Lisa was there. Her eyes looked dead. I went to the police station. I told the officers that my neighbor was stalking me. "Did she touch you?" they asked. "No," I said. "Did she break into your house?" "No," I told them. "She just stares at me from her window." The police laughed. They told me it was not a crime to look out a window. They thought I was crazy. I tried to talk to Lisa. I walked over to her yard. "Why are you watching my house at night?" I asked. She gave me a big, empty smile. "I don't know what you mean," she said. Her voice was cold. It sounded like Sarah's voice, but also like a ghost's. One night, I heard a noise. It was a creak on the floor. I reached out to touch Sarah, but the bed was cold. She was gone. I ran downstairs. My heart was beating very fast. The front door was open. The cold wind blew into the house. I ran outside. I saw Lisa standing at the edge of the grass. She was as still as a stone. My wife, Sarah, was standing right next to her. Sarah's eyes were wide open, but she looked like she was dreaming. She did not see me. "Sarah!" I yelled. "Come back inside." She did not move. Lisa turned her head very slowly. She looked at me and whispered something into Sarah's ear. I could not hear the words, but they sounded like ice. Then, Sarah turned around. She walked back to our house. Her legs moved like a puppet's legs. She was stiff. She walked past me. She did not look at me. She went upstairs and got back into bed. She fell asleep instantly. "She belongs to me now," a voice whispered in my head. It was Lisa's voice. It felt like a cold hand on my brain. The next morning, Sarah acted like everything was normal. "You had a bad dream," she told me while making coffee. But when she looked at me, her eyes were different. They were not my wife's eyes anymore. They were flat. They were empty. Every night after that, the same thing happened. I would wake up and look out the window. Lisa was there, but now, Sarah was standing at the window next to her. They stood side by side in the moonlight. They were two shadows watching me. I was a prisoner in my own home. I was alone, even though my family was right there. Then came the final night. I woke up and the house was silent. Too silent. I ran to the window. Lisa was gone. Sarah was gone. I ran outside into the dark. I screamed Sarah's name until my throat hurt. I looked in the woods. I looked in Lisa's house. Lisa's house was empty. There was no furniture. There were no boxes. It looked like no one had lived there for years. The police came again. They searched everywhere. They found nothing. No footprints. No car. Just nothing. My wife was gone. My old sweetheart had taken her. Now I sit by the window every night. I do not sleep. I just watch the empty house next door. I am waiting. I am watching the darkness. I know they are out there somewhere, looking back at me. I lost my past to the crash, and now I have lost my future to a ghost. I know the truth now. Alyssa came back to finish what she started. She took my wife. She took my life. And I know that very soon, she will come back for me. I am the only one left. I am next. My high school was a massive, old building made of weathered red bricks that felt more like a monument to the past than a place for learning, and the hallways were so long and dark that they seemed to stretch into another dimension. During the day, the school was a loud symphony of slamming lockers and shouting teenagers, but once the sun went down, the atmosphere shifted into something heavy and predatory. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment the final bell rang, and the building settled into a watchful, breathing silence that made my skin crawl. I was a member of the theater club, so we often stayed late to paint sets and practice our lines until our voices went hoarse. We usually stayed in the theater room on the first floor because it was a lone island of light, while the rest of the school was left in total darkness to save on electricity. One Tuesday night, I realized I had left my script in my locker on the third floor, which was the oldest and most unsettling wing of the school, where the air always felt stagnant and students avoided lingering even during the day. I told my friends I would be back in a minute and stepped out into the oppressive silence of the main hallway. My footsteps sounded like rhythmic gunshots against the floor as I climbed the grand stone staircase, and the silence grew so thick I could almost feel it pressing against my ears. When I reached the top landing, the hallway was a void of blackness until the motion sensor lights detected me and hummed to life one by one, creating a long line of yellow light that revealed the lockers ahead. I started walking, but I stopped dead in my tracks when I realized I wasn't alone. About 50 feet away, a girl was standing perfectly still next to a locker with her hood pulled up and her long, dark hair covering her face like a nightmare. I tried to stay calm and told myself she was just another student staying late, so I forced a friendly hello and asked if she was working late too. She didn't say a word or move a muscle, but as I took a few hesitant steps closer, I noticed a terrifying detail. She wasn't actually still. Her entire body was vibrating with tiny, violent tremors, as if she were enduring a seizure or suppressed by an invisible rage. I stopped 10 feet away and asked if she was okay, and the moment I spoke, the shaking stopped instantly. With slow and agonizing movement, she began to tilt her head back toward the ceiling, stretching her neck until it reached a broken angle where her chin pointed straight up at the flickering light. When she spoke, her voice was a horrific, grating sound like the grinding of dry stones as she rasped, "It is not my locker." Before I could process the malice in her voice, I looked past her and saw something even worse. At the far end of the hallway, the sensor lights were turning off one by one, as if something invisible was walking toward us and consuming the light as it approached. Whatever was coming made no sound at all, no footsteps and no breathing, just a rapid, encroaching void swallowing the hallway whole. Panic finally took over, and I didn't grab my book or look back as I spun around and sprinted for the stairs. I practically flew down the steps and didn't slow down until I slammed into the theater room doors, gasping for air with a face as white as a sheet. My teacher's expression shifted to a look of pale-faced recognition when I described the girl, and he immediately ordered everyone to pack their bags. He escorted us out in a tight group, locking the doors while staring up at the dark windows of the third floor with trembling hands. The next morning, the third floor was blocked off with caution tape for repairs, but a janitor later whispered to me that the power to that floor had been disconnected for over a week. There was no way those motion lights could have turned on for me, and there was no way anyone should have been up there. I never went back to that floor, but I still hear that rattling voice in my dreams. It took me weeks to realize that she hadn't been standing at a random locker. She was standing directly in front of mine, waiting for me to open it. It was a Tuesday, which I remember clearly because Tuesday is always the day I stay late for art club, and as a senior in high school named Alex, I am used to the building being loud and full of slamming lockers and shouting teachers. However, by 7 p.m., the school turns into a completely different place that feels dead and empty. So I was up in the second floor art room, painting a large mural of a forest that started to look like long, thin fingers reaching for the ceiling in the dim evening light. I liked the quiet at first because it helped me think. But as the sun went down, the silence started to feel heavy, like the building was holding its breath, so I decided it was time to go home. My hands were covered in blue and green paint, and the water was freezing cold as I washed them, and the splashing against the metal sink was the only sound in the whole wing until I suddenly heard something from the floor below. It was the steady, rhythmic sound of a basketball hitting the gym floor, which made me stop the water and listen closely while I wondered if a coach was still there or if a student had snuck in to practice. I remembered that my car was the only one in the parking lot when I arrived, so the gym should have been dark and empty, but the bouncing continued anyway. I dried my hands and tried to stay calm by telling myself I was just tired, so I packed my bag and turned off the lights, leaving the room black except for the pale glow coming from the hallway. The long hallway had shiny waxed floors that looked like a dark river, and every few feet a red exit sign cast a bloody glow on the lockers as I walked toward the stairs with my sneakers making tiny squeaking sounds. Suddenly the basketball sound stopped and the silence became so loud that my ears started to ring, and then a flat, whispering voice came through the metal air vents in the ceiling. "I see you, Alex," the voice said, sounding thin and sharp and not like a person at all, which made my heart jump in my chest because I had no idea how it knew my name. I didn't wait to find out, and I didn't look at the vents as I started to run, and even though I tried to be careful, I could hear slow footsteps walking behind me. I reached the stairs and flew down them with my heavy bag hitting my back, and when I got to the first floor near the library with its big glass walls, I saw something out of the corner of my eye that made me stop. Inside the dark library, a boy was sitting very straight at a computer while wearing an old blue varsity jacket from 20 years ago, and even though he was staring at the screen, the computer was turned off and black. "Hey!" I yelled with a shaking voice because I wanted to tell him the school was closed and we had to leave, but the boy didn't move or turn around at all. He was so still that it didn't seem human, and a cold shiver went down my spine as I backed away from the glass and ran for the front doors. I pushed the heavy metal bars and felt the amazing cold night air on my face as I sprinted to my car, fumbling with my keys and dropping them once because my hands were shaking so hard. I finally got inside and locked the doors immediately while taking a deep breath because I thought I was safe, but when I looked up at the school building, I saw that the lights in the art room were back on. I knew I had turned them off and I remembered the click of the switch, but they were bright yellow against the dark sky, and then I saw the boy in the varsity jacket standing at the window. He was looking down at my car with his hands pressed against the glass, but he didn't have a face because where his eyes and nose and mouth should have been, there was only smooth, pale skin. He just watched me with that blank head, so I started my car and drove away as fast as I could without even stopping at the red light because I just wanted to be home in my room with the door locked. I went straight to bed without telling my parents because I knew they would think I was crazy, and even though I eventually fell asleep, my dreams were full of the sound of that basketball hitting the floor. The next morning I was terrified to go back, but I had to get my sketchbook for a grade, so I walked into the school at 8 a.m. when it was full of noisy people and felt safe again. I went up to the art room where my teacher, Mrs. Gable, told me I had left my book open on the table, so I walked over to it and saw a drawing on a page I hadn't used yet. It was a perfect, realistic drawing of me sleeping in my bed with the blankets pulled up to my chin and my eyes closed, and at the bottom of the page were messy charcoal letters that said, "You look pretty when you sleep." I looked out the window at the bright sun, but in the corner of the glass I could still see the faint, oily marks of two palms pressed against the pane where the faceless boy had been standing. I never stayed late at the school again, and I never looked at the air vents without feeling like someone was whispering my name.